obviously you had the rough lead up to the Indy 500, but then you had the dramatic triumph, man, of bump day. And I mean, it was a triumph, but it was also a little bit of heartbreak because it was your teammate. We get that, but take us inside the car, take us inside the helmet when you're going out for your last go at it, man. And
your first go. Talk about your first go, and then like, oh no, I have to go again.
Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna go back just one step before that. Just before we even went out for qualifying, me and Graham were in our driver lounge area, and we agreed that it was either going to be me going home or him going home, because that's just where we thought our speed was, right? And like, Connor, you'll get it. Like, it's just an honest conversation. Yeah, we have been at this place for days. Like, where your speed is within like
absolutely
half a mile an hour, depending if the wind blows your direction or not. And we both were like, clearly it's not personal. We both want to be in the race. The hope was poor Stingray that we wanted to knock Stingray out of the race. I mean, best car in Indy name, but we were like, we don't want you in this race right now because we want to be in the race.
The odds makers were thinking the same thing, like, Stingray, we don't know about him. Like, the other guys will be all right,
So go out for the last chance, which, I mean, just feels like a terrible name. Like, you're talking about making a situation worse. Like, it's now literally the last chance. Like, we already know it is. So I'm watching, and Christian goes out, and I'm like, oh, that's not very fast. Thinking like, maybe we're all right. And I see Stingray go out, and I'm like, oh, he's even a little bit worse. Maybe the track's not very good. And I remember going out and like first lap going slower than like their quickest.
Oh, yeah.
And I was honestly, I can't even say what my initial thought was on the podcast, because unless you guys censor, it's just, I'll get in trouble for it. I was just like, oh, we're so done. Like just so done. The only hope was that Graham was going to suck worse than we did.
Yeah.
Which granted, it was close. And then you come in and you try not to think about it, but like, it was a very real moment for me. I'm like, we're not going to make this race.
Yeah.
Like, and what that then can lead you to in your mind isn't any different than the things you stay up about on a Saturday night after you're kind of struggling and stuff like that.
But it's a spiral.
It sure can. So then, because at that point, the way they did the format of that is, unless you're in, you're not going to pull your time, because in that last chance, as soon as you roll out, you withdraw your time. So basically, the only person that situation favors is whoever's not about to make the race. And thank God there was only 34 cars, because if there'd have been 35, you'd have been alternating with someone else, and
yes,
maybe you just don't have the time. Like, I remember the year that James got bumped, and he didn't even get the chance to go out. He had a tire vibration, had to pit, and never even got the chance to go out again.
Yes.
So what did I learn throughout that qualifying? I think I stayed present and just focused on like, just do what I need to do.
Yeah.
I think I realized
what can you do? Like what you looked at that first run and you said, we are clearly not that fast, but maybe consistency, right? Like, because usually when you get down to that point of tiny little bits, consistency. So you talk with your engineers and you're like, hey, I think we need one little thing. And people, I don't think, realize at Indy, there's so many small things that can help. And if you happen to get the right set of tires and everything goes together, and you maybe just tweak that front wing a little bit and you reduce some of the scrub, is that kind of what you guys were thinking? Like, let's just ride and see what happens.
So we came in and they're like, well, how's the balance? I'm like, guys, we're missing it by a mile. I'm like, at that point, we were still looking. It was like 3/4 of a mile an hour. Or something. Like, it's not insignificant, which I know for some people, 3/4 of 1 mile an hour average speed isn't a lot. And in reality, it's not. I'll send you the graphic, the difference between me and Graham at the end of the run.
But it's huge.
However,
if I had 3/4 of a mile an hour, I would have qualified like 5th or something. Like, it's crazy.
It's wild. So I just said to the team, like, look, guys, like, here's my balance. Here's what I'm feeling. I think we're scrubbing because we're sliding. And people have like speculated what we did, and they were like, oh, you guys must have made some like huge changes. Throughout the whole thing, we did 3 things. We added wing, we then took out front wing, and then we changed the tire pressure. That was it.
There you go.
That was everything that we did in that session. The thing that was crazy was we did literally a 3-lap cool down run, went back out, went like hardly faster. And that was the moment where the biggest panic of like, oh, yeah, like we're so effed. Like we are just beyond screwed here. So that was the other thing. So we're going to debunk the myth of the changes we made. We didn't do anything heroic. We just added downforce, took front wing out, changed tire pressure. The next thing we slightly debunked this myth that the engines have to be like stone cold all the time to improve.
Yeah.
Crazy. Can't explain that. Like, don't get it even now.
That's fascinating to me because you notice in qualifying, if you're trying to make other runs, like you see this in Fast Friday a lot, cars, after they make their first run, that's usually the fastest run. Then you start kind of dropping in power a little bit. Both engine manufacturers do this because the cooler the engines run, the faster they go. So this is why even me, and I think a lot of us in the paddock, like we're watching your last run and we're like, there's no way. Like it's not scientifically, mathematically possible.
It's so unlikely that I actually didn't realize until I watched it back that we left within like a minute of the session ending.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea, man. Like I didn't know. That's why the first thing I said on the radio is how much time is left. Because I just assumed that if Graham went out, that he'd just go like quicker, you know? So I'm glad they didn't tell me that. But I also realized in my mind, it was crystal clear what I was going to do. We were either going to like crash trying and just keep going out as many times, or we weren't going to make the race. You know, and at that point, that risk and reward, probably the most I've ever been like, you know what? Just do it. Like, let's just go. Like, don't care what it takes. Let's just do it. But man, that's probably the most peak stress I've ever felt. I wouldn't wish bump day on anybody. And it's conflicting because, you know, and like you all got great mates, and you know, Connor probably can relate to this the most. You've got drivers who you're like particularly good friends with, who you gravitate to, you know, and Graham has become, you know, since I've been at RLL, a good mate of mine. You know, I go to Cars and Coffees, which actually the first one I ever went to was with you, Connor. We went out to his one, you know, way out there. It was still in Brownsburg. So I'd known Graham a while, went to his house. It was one of the first people I met when I ever came to Indy, actually. So you've got these emotions, and you've got like amazing emotion of like happiness and gratitude and just thankfulness for like making a race. And on this side, you just knocked out a team car, which isn't great. And then you're like, well, actually, I just knocked out a mate, not great. And
team owner's son,
not great.
You're not great,
And then, do you know the bit that I still get a kick out of, man? Keyboard warriors. I will never understand them, man, because they're like, that's a really bold strategy, knocking out the boss's son. I'm like, I'm just out here trying to do the best I can, guys. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Right. Well, those people, Jack, are stupid, so you don't have to worry about them.
I just don't get them.
What did you say to Bobby after all that?
First words to Bob.
I will say, when I saw him, he was smiling and he hugged me, and he actually seemed happy that we had got in. I don't even know if I said anything. I don't even know what to say, you know, in that moment, because that's awful, man. Like, that's just a lot, because you know what it means to the team. So you want to celebrate, but then you're like, actually, with our performance on itself, it's not like celebrate worthy.
It's compartmentalizing celebration, right? Like, because it's that is a very difficult scene, and I know exactly how you feel, because sometimes, you know, you're in a team and maybe things didn't quite go as well for your other teammates or someone on the group, and you're like, I am excited, but like when I barely made the race that year, 2018, like when Hinch didn't make it, like I was like thrilled, but I was like, I'm starting 31st. You know what I mean? Like we shouldn't be excited about this, but it's that emotion that, like what you just mentioned, you went through oh my gosh, like we're either going to crash or we're going to put this sucker in the show. And that's what makes the Indy 500 so special. I
sure.
love it.
And there's this one phrase that people keep saying, and it's like, this is Indy.
Yeah.
And they've said that, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. But like, I don't know, man. There was just something about the drama of it all. It happening on the final run. Lap 3 was quicker than lap 2.
Yeah.
Like, of all these things, and you're like, anywhere else, any other racetrack, none of this happens. But the drama, the mystique of it all. And then you get to Monday, and then, Catherine tags Steph, in earnest. Like, she felt awful about that.
Oh, yeah.
Steph can't get to race, feel awful for him. And then somehow Graham's back in the race.
Yeah.
To me, my stress of Indy didn't stop until Graham said that he was going to be in the 24 for the race.
Jeez.
And then somehow we were all laughing and joking, like, well, for the guy who didn't make the race, he's now got a better car than what we had. And then anyway, that became its own thing. But
yeah,
man, May, I will never forget any of the 500s, but this one I will never, ever in my life forget. I have aged through this.